Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody joining us today. Thank you so much for attending today's presentation where we're going to be talking about using virtualization tools to recover quicker from ransomware attacks. My name is Mary Owen, and I'm going to be helping out our hosts today. They are our dynamic duo and my friends Bob Spurzum and Stacy Budd, who are principal consultants here with Arcserve. As we're going through this presentation, we definitely want to hear your questions. I'm sure you'll have a lot of them. So please do send those to us using the question section of your interface, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end of the event. Today's session is also being recorded, and we'll be sending out an email shortly after to the email address you registered with so that you can access that recording at your leisure. So with that out of the way, take it away, Bob.
Thank you, Mary. Stacy, let's jump to the next slide, please. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Stacy, glad to be with you on this great webinar for this great topic. Hey, we're Arcserve. We're truly a global company for data protection. You know us. We've been in this business for a long time, almost 30 years now, way back to Cheyenne. But more recently, we've known for our virtualization backup product, our unified data protection. We still sell Arcserve backup, but we also designed 3 years ago and launched an entirely new backup solution for virtual system and new cloud applications. So we're very excited about that. In fact, it's our virtual capability that we're going to highlight today with regard to this important security problem, namely ransomware. Next slide. Hey, the name's kind of cute, but there's nothing cute about this stuff. This is really a serious security issue facing individuals, and importantly facing businesses. Ransomware comes in two forms quickly. Maybe the one you've seen, I hope you haven't, but I saw it once. It's more kind of through a web browser. It locks your screen and it holds your ransom to unlock your system. Usually you just close your browser. You might go into Task Manager, knock down a task that's probably related to a web account, or just do a hard reset on your computer. So you can knock those out pretty quickly in most cases. But this second type is different. Here's where they come in and they encrypt. They go into the data access through your account that you're logged into, and they go into application data on your computer and encrypt it so that you know, and they've got the key, so you no longer have access to that data. That's a game changer, and it can be very, very crippling. And they're focusing on people that have money to pay, police departments, hospitals, people with sensitive data that are anybody that's unprotected, and they're going in and holding them ransom. So this is very, very serious business. Next slide. And the number of attacks is going up. Now, I'm going to talk about this quickly. Now, you go click to that link and read about this. This data came from a company there, Beasley. They do specifically, they help you and protect companies against these types of attacks. So these numbers are specifically relative to the clients that they've gone in to assist and help in these attacks. So they are in the hundreds over there, but this is just one consulting firm that specializes in this area. We didn't have figures that wrapped up everything, say, for the whole United States, but you can see clearly that how quickly the number of attacks is increasing, and that's what's alarming to all of us. Next slide. Okay. Mary, we got a poll?
Yes, we do. All right, let me send out our first poll question. So speaking of attacks, we're curious if your organization has ever been attacked by ransomware. We'll just give this a few moments as the responses are coming in. All right, and it looks like 58% of organizations that are represented on the line have been attacked. 37% say no, and 5% are not sure.
Okay, there they are. Yeah, not surprising. I think that's clearly the trend that I was seeing in my research. Okay, thank you very much. That's very useful information, even for a small sample. Okay, let's jump back into our slides. So here are some of the statistics as I was doing my research, preparing for today. It's interesting that the attackers are smart guys. They're going after areas where the data is more valuable, more sensitive, particularly in areas of the financial services and healthcare, top the list as they ranked by industry, who was getting hit. But you can see some of the numbers here. It just tells you this is really important. Let's take a look at the next slide. This shows some of the different types of threats. They've been giving lots of different names. I don't none of the names are relative to, I know anything about, but there's quite a few of them there. And then by country, that was interesting why Italy jumped in there, and I also noticed that Germany's missing, Japan, China. I just wonder, but anyway, you can see definitely it's a worldwide problem. Next slide. And I thought I would grab in there was many screenshots so you could see when you it's easy to Google this subject. You get tons of articles on this problem, and these are some of the screenshots from simple blue screens to others. And the idea is that it's ransom. They're giving you information here on how to pay them so they can either unlock your session or importantly unencrypt all your data.
Right, and an important part to, I think, Bob, to add in here too is these are criminals. That are doing this, right? If you pay, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we got somebody that'll actually pay. So you're probably more likely, if you've been hit with ransomware, to be hit again and again and again by it. Although you can up your security and up your responses, you'll continue to be targeted. It maybe not by the same organization, but they'll share your information with other organizations. So it's really concept to have that they're not hackers, they're not somebody sitting in a basement just having fun. It is criminal organizations kind of doing this. So something I like to add in there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I noticed on the one slide it said 77% of the people they pay, and then they didn't get their data unlocked.
Right.
So yeah, these characters are not trustworthy. Stacy, you got to help us with this problem. I've set the stage for you.
Sure, absolutely. Likewise, Bob, earlier you said it was great, being on here with you as well, and so it's great being on here with you as well. Everybody else here today, we're going to talk about some tools that can kind of help you, once you've been infected with ransomware, how you can kind of get that data, what you can do to recover your data, right? What you can do to once that's happened. Nothing can be said short of doing things like education, prevention, all those kind of things. But unfortunately, people still get infected, right? So when we talk about our tool, Unified Data Protection, and what it brings to the table, first off, just a quick overview of Unified Data Protection. It is an image-based backup solution. Okay, back up to disk, then move that data off to another location, move it off to offline media such as tape, for instance. We were just having a conversation around that previous to this. So it does give you a lot of capabilities. If you look, when you have your primary site, this is your backup server, your client machines. We're leveraging tools such as data deduplication, which is a global process that really reduces the footprint that's going onto disk for you. But then giving you the capability to, for instance, go off to tape to get that offline set of media. If something is offline, it can't be infected, right? So having copies offline is always a good idea. That doesn't have to be tape, right? We're using tape here as an example. I've seen people do it with disk as well. You just have to be aware, and sometimes people take it and put it on, in a, for instance, in a bank or something like that, manually take it off-site too. So there's a couple of options there. You can also take that data and you can replicate it either from a remote site into the main office, or maybe even the other way around. Maybe this is a DR site or something like that, as you see down here in the bottom corner. And then, of course, being able to leverage technologies such as the cloud, not only on our own cloud, on our own Arcserve cloud, but then public clouds such as Amazon, Azure, Fujitsu, things like that, Eucalyptus, which is a private cloud product that's out there as well. So being able to leverage those tools and having capabilities of DR in the cloud as well, disaster recovery from those perspectives there too. When we look at specific tools that will help you if you get infected, Instant VM is the process of taking a backup, converting that backup into a virtual machine, so in case some problem occurs, you can automatically boot to that virtual machine. It's quick. There's a machine's already created from there, so it gives you the best performance. And depending on when your backup schedule is, right, definitely Instant VM is very good. Unfortunately, if your Instant VM or your infection occurs before the backup, right, in the backup, and then we create the Instant VM, the problem is that machine could be infected as well, which is in the offline state, but still restoring to that doesn't always, it's not guaranteed. It's just compared to when the infection occurs compared to when your backup schedule is, right? So it gives you the best performance, but something like Instant, or I should say that's virtual standby. Instant VM, right, Instant VM is the next level of what I was just explaining, where we use emulation instead, right? So now we can have an aggressive backup schedule, which is something I always talk to customers about. Backup as frequently as you can with as little impact as you can. So you have to look at the impact versus the frequency of backup. So that's your RPO, your recovery point objective, when you're recovering from. And Instant VM gives you that capability. Now I can choose multiple backups to come back from, right? So if I'm having that aggressive backup schedule, so now if I do get infected, okay, I lose an hour's worth of data, or 2 hours, or whatever that might be, that you determine is your sweet spot, right? How far can I afford to go back? And you can work with that. Instant BMR recovery is the ability to take and leverage and do restores, right? Remote, in this case on the Linux side, right? And remotely, and people start using that machine even before it's completely re-imaged and all. So these are two tools that right within the UDP suite that we have that can definitely help you do some recovery as far as that goes. I've talked to many customers. We have some use cases where we have customers that have definitely used these to help them recover, both in the medical industry, in the publishing industry, and I know we have even more, but not all of them, of course, come out public as well. Here's that virtual standby technology that I was speaking of, and the virtual standby, you would use both, to be honest with you, and you have access typically to both products, Instant VM and Virtual Standby. Virtual Standby is great for that quick recovery, meaning that the machine's already there, I'm going to get the best performance, and it's all done, right? And then you can bring up that machine on a different network if you needed to, and those kind of things. You could do that with Instant VM as well. Instant VM would be the fallback, right? So, okay, my virtual standby, unfortunately, is infected, so that's my first option. Now let's go ahead and use Instant VM. I can bring up this machine in a matter of minutes, right, and come from an earlier backup. So those aggressive backup schedules on Instant, can help Instant VM where virtual standby sometimes falls short. The other thing about virtual standby is there's a disk cost to virtual standby. So some customers, they don't have the storage infrastructure to spin up, additional virtual machines and those kind of things. Nice thing about Instant VM is there's not that additional one. So it helps you, it kind of fills the gap, if you will, okay? When we look at, what's your line of defense, right? What can you do to best, secure your data as far as this goes? Number one is, back up your data, regularly and frequently. always make sure that you're doing that, okay? And if we just kind of see the notes here, 2 backup copies, 1 to be stored in the cloud, you know, and the other recorded to physical storage, a portable hard drive, tape, something like that, right? So definitely, the more frequently you're backing up your data, the better. Okay. Make sure you set up certain restrictions for files. Absolutely, right? You don't want to have everybody be able to access everything, right? And you also want to make sure you leverage who can access the account. So for instance, you know, and I've been an administrator before on a network, and it's easy just to log in as admin and do everything as admin, and sometimes maybe even forget that's who you're logged in, and maybe you browse or something like that, and those are practices that you should never do, right? You should always log in as yourself. That way, number one, you can always track, right? You may have admin rights, right, but you can always track, you can always restrict, you can always do things if people do that. So make sure you have best practices around who can access files, how they're logging in, and those kind of things as well. And your backup copy could save you in all kinds of circumstances, absolutely. We talk about ransomware here, but it could be any kind of disaster that you're recovering from there specifically. So, you know, make sure that you're including, you know, removal of critical files and drive failure, right? Make sure that you have ways to get this. You have policies in place. You are testing the restore processes and all of that as well.
Stacy, let me jump in. We got a good question from one of our listeners. It's about, you know, should I manually take my disk offline after the transfer of backups in order to stay safe?
I typically would not do that with my primary, right? But maybe if you're copying the backup to another destination, right? Maybe that other destination isn't a physical destination, but another drive, then you could definitely do that. Thing to remember about drives, you know, is unfortunately, you know, hard drives, things like that as well, they have a shelf life, believe it or not. So especially you see that with SSDs, maybe not so much now as when they first came out, but you definitely want to look at that and, you know, is it smart to have that go off to disk, or should you be going off to tape? I know people don't like to hear the word tape, but, you know, in a lot of cases, you know, it becomes a good option for you too.
Very good, thanks.
Absolutely. Great question, by the way. So time for our second poll question. So Mary, if you want to share that out.
Sure thing. So the second question is, how confident are you that your data could be recovered if your organization was attacked? And recovery is the name of the game, right? Backing up is nice, but you have to get the data back. So,
you know, I was pretty excited there when it first started. Everybody was 100% confident, but now those numbers are starting to shift around.
They are shifting for sure.
And Mary, you've done a number of these with me, and how many times do I say never trust a backup? Always verify, 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 right?
Every single time. All right, so we will go ahead and share those results out. So 15% are very confident, 58% are confident, and 27% are somewhat confident. So we'll see if by the end of this we can get hopefully confidence levels up some.
Right, absolutely, and the best thing you can do is test, right? So, I mean, verification, testing, all of that should be part of, you know, a monthly kind of process, if that infrequently, right? So there should always be that. We do realize that people have, you know, you have so many hats you have to wear, so we're definitely aware of that. A couple of terms, excuse me, to be aware of, and I think I mean, these are industry standard terms. The first one being recovery point objectives, when you're going to be recovering from. And it's different for everybody. I can tell you when I demo our product to customers, a lot of times I'll get told, well, what's the best policy to put in place? You know, how frequently should I be backing up my data? And it's different for every single company out there. Right? What you have to do is look at your data, take a step back from it, and take a look at the data, and then try to assign a dollar value to it. Right? Sometimes you're not the person that's going to do that, right? But you know, if you were to lose that data, how much can you afford? You know, so you put a dollar value on it, and you say, okay, I can afford to lose an hour's worth, a day's worth, 2 days worth, whatever it might be, right? And that's where you'll kind of start to understand how to create your recovery point objectives, how frequently you're backing up or protecting that data. You know, does it need to be a continuous protection, or can it be an hourly or twice a day or something like that as far as that goes?
Stacy, a question just came in that's kind of relative to recovery point. Ransomware could have landed a month ago and just been sitting there quietly before it's been turned on. So it's not always something that just happened, in the current time, right?
Right, absolutely. So you got to make sure that when you're recovering from, is not infected as well, right? So you have those options that you're going back to, or if maybe you've been infected but nothing has happened yet, you need to know and better understand as far as that goes too. So sometimes it's also around retention of data, how long to retain it too. That's going to be very important to understand. Okay. The other term here is recovery time objective. How long is it going to take to recover this data? So I'm going to use an example here. I've heard before from, I've done some webcasts with some medical folks that were infected, and it's just as important how quickly we can get that data back up and running. Sometimes it's about, when we go back to recovery point just for a moment, how many, in the case of something like medical, they may get fined for each case that, let's say a patient comes in and visits them or something like that, and they can't pull that data back up. There's a significant fine, for each one of those that they can't pull up, and I think it's something like $10,000. It may be different based on the state, or it may be different based on, obviously country and those kind of things as well. But there's a significant fine. So if they were to get, ransomware, something like, let's say $30,000 or $40,000, well, let's see, we saw 10 patients, in that time. It's quicker for me just to pay the ransom, not quicker, but it's easier for me to pay the ransomware. I won't have the impact of possibly losing even more money if I can't pull that back. So that's where recovery point objective really comes in aggressive. And the other side of that is the recovery time objective. How long can I afford these systems to be down, right? So, and that cannot be overplayed, right? So really understanding what type of restores do you have in place. Are you just restoring files? Do you need to be able to bring up an entire system? Those kind of things as well. Recovery time objective is always going to play, a very, very key role into everything there as well. When you look at, again, here's one of those examples of, a medical company here, a multi-site medical center, right? In this case, this customer, their incident, they got hit at 8:30 in the morning, right? So when they came in, they were encrypted, and they were able to figure out who got, how they got hit, phishing email, right? A word attachment and a macro. Let me tell you, it often is, something like this, some type of, hey, let's check out this email, and they make them very creative, right? Obviously, sometimes I'm in the industry, and sometimes I have to look 3-4 times. Really, is that legitimate? What is that? And then the best case is if you even, worry about it all, you don't interact with it. But people are going to. Right, I've seen things where, talk to companies, security companies, where people will drop USB keys outside of businesses, hoping that somebody will pick it up and say, hey, a 16 gig USB key, I could use this. I could put some music on there, listen to it at work. Hey, this is great. And the next thing you know, the network's infected. So there's a number of ways. This particular customer was affected just through an email, right, as far as that goes. By 11:30, they were back at a steady state. They were up and running within 3 hours of that. So, that's pretty good, right, as far as that goes. They were able to identify what data access had been granted, right, would have been compromised by the network shares. Understand, this is a big part of that, was not only getting their data back, but also how long did all the other processes take too. File level recovery, directly into those folders, right? Removed all infected data, back up and running in 3 hours. Zero data loss. This is really the most important point here. This customer, and I know this customer, right, as far as this goes, and they were lucky enough they had done a backup at 7 a.m. in the morning, right? So they were able to fall back to a fairly early backup as far as that goes to get that zero data loss. So, you know, kudos to them to be able to do that. But again, it speaks to that recovery point objective and those kind of things too.
Stacy,
right, so
this is neat. So you were involved in this example. Tell us a little bit, just quickly, about the file identification. In practical terms, how do they identify which files were impacted or infected?
Well, there's typically scans that you can run. So I mean, they use their tools, their security tools, to be able to scan that. First thing is, they lock down the network as far as that goes. Make sure that the infections doesn't spread and those kind of things. But then you can start your scanning and your approach as far as that goes with the security tools that they have in place in order to do that. Right. So then the next step after that is, now that we've done that, then you go through the process of cleaning that cleaning those servers. Make sure that there's no shares or anything like that, that it's propagated to other other servers, other sets of data out there, and then at that point it becomes a recovery kind of process. In the meantime, right, if this, a different type of customer, they could definitely bring up a copy of that server, right, through tools like Instant VM, and bring it up on a different network and access that data, be using it while they're doing the recovery and performing all the recovery processes. So there doesn't need to always be, that 3-hour loss of time. In a lot of cases, you're still doing the cleaning, you're still going to do the restores and everything like that as well, but you can definitely mitigate your downtime with tools like Instant VM, Virtual Standby, things like that.
Well, that's a good segue. I know our audience is really anxious to see these great tools.
Sure. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share out. I've moved over my demo environment here. This is our unified data protection, and we're going to go through a couple of these tools. I'm not going to go through and give you a full-fledged kind of demo here, but we got some good time here, so we're going to make sure we show you what you can use. We're definitely going to focus on virtualization, and that's where Instant VM is going to come into play, Virtual Standby, those kind of tools as well. But the first thing that I want to kind of show you is knowledge is king. Right, so when you look at our tool, the first thing when you log into it is going to be the dashboard, which will show you, number one, do you have any failed backups? Right, you need to know that, because if for some reason you have trouble backing up your data, you need to be aware of that so you can address it. Right, so quickly you can jump to that. I'm not going to jump to it here, but you could click on it and go to it. I've actually forced this failure just so we have something to look at in my example. The other type of things we're going to see here is our storage utilization. Are we running out of disk storage to back up to? Again, if this is a problem, you need to be aware of it so that when you do run into that issue, you're prepared for it, right? And you need to know how to address it, right? So it doesn't catch you off guard or off balance or something like that. And it's visual, so you look at it quickly. This is the bar we're looking at down here, which is your actual data. With deduplication and things like that, we're actually better utilizing your storage, so we're reporting on all of those. But really, these two main reports here, the recovery point objective, right? How frequently, what's the age of my newest backups, my oldest backups? Do I have backups that are older than 30 days or even older than that? Do I have machines that have never been backed up? So you can definitely address these point on and kind of understand what's going on. And I could click on these, it would take me directly into those list of those machines, so I could see, okay, these machines have never been backed up. Right, so we need to address that, right, as far as that goes. The recovery time objective is the amount of time that it's going to take to do the recovery. So these are SLAs that you set as the customer. You say, you know what, I want to be able to do a bare metal recovery in, 3 hours, right, or 4 hours, or whatever it might be, or I want to be able to perform instant virtual machine in under 15 minutes. right? Be able to bring up a machine quickly, maybe even shorter than that. I'm just using that as an example, maybe under 10 minutes or something. I can bring up one of my test machines in under 4 minutes, right? It really kind of depends on what all is going on that machine, things like that as well. If I do a restore of a whole virtual machine, how long could that take? So you're going to create SLAs, and I'll show you how to create those SLAs here in a moment, and we'll report back. So when you do your due diligence and you do your testing every month, that I hope you're doing at least every month. You may not test bare metal restores monthly, but you should do some type of restore testing. We'll report back, are you hitting your SLAs? All right, so which is very important as far as that goes, so you can better understand that. Better yet, you can have different SLAs for different categories of servers and move different servers into those different SLA profiles, right, as far as that goes. So you may have critical servers that you want to go through, and those need to come up in a under 15 minutes. Other servers aren't going to be as important, and you could take an hour to bring those servers up or something like that. So you can create different profiles as far as that goes. The assured recovery test here is actually an automated test. I'm going to show you that as well. The assured recovery test, this is reporting on whether it's hitting the time frame, okay, that we need it to hit, but more the assured recovery test itself is telling me whether or not I can actually recover that server, right? So the test is telling me, the validity of the server itself. This is telling me from a time standpoint, right? And this is automated there. So when we take a look at, I'm going to go over to the resources tab. This is where we do everything within UDP. If we go into our SLA profiles, right, and we take, and I've already got one created here, so we'll just pre-use this, pre-use? Let's take a look at this one. How about that? That we've already got created. So we're going to have those different time frames that we put in for the different types of restore types that we have. So that assured recovery testing, the virtual machine recovery, the instant VM recovery, and so forth. And these can be in, minutes, hours, days, whatever you want it to be as far as that goes, and then move different machines into the different profiles. I only have one profile. I moved all my machines into the one profile. You may not care about something like bare metal restore, so you don't even need to report on that, right? But definitely you can set these up to whatever you want to. I think 1 hour, I guess if it's a small machine, but that might be a tight task. But again, it depends on the amount of data, those kind of things, and this will report back to you. Maybe I test something like bare metal recovery and it just doesn't happen in an hour, and I want it to happen in an hour. What do? Well, I use this as a reason to possibly go virtual, right? So I go to my manager, my boss, and say, look, if we get infected, I'm going to have to restore this machine. Or, and then it's going to take, we're seeing it that process is going to take, upwards of 3 hours, 4 hours to do that restore, right? Maybe even longer, right? When we perform that, can we afford that? And they'll be like, no, we can't afford that downtime, right? What's our options? And that's when you start looking at things like virtual standby, instant virtual machine, things like that as well. If it's a virtual machine, then you can do a virtual machine recovery, right? So you have a lot of different tools out there. So not always will these SLA reports just report back to, how your backup's performing and that kind of information. It'll give you the tools to kind of leverage that information to go and, address your approach to things as well, and maybe get the budget to make changes and everything like that as well. When you look at the backup plans here, right, we're going to have several different backup plans. I'm not going to create a new one, but what I figured I would do is I have one here that I'm doing all kinds of different things on, right? Actually, the oddest thing is I don't think I'm actually running a backup. Actually, maybe I am. Let's see. Let's go back into our first task. So we are actually backing up a machine here, right? So I'm backing up a machine to a data store. There we are. I'm not actually running a backup schedule. So let's add a schedule in here, and we're just going to say every 3 hours. Right? So now it actually has a schedule. Then we're replicating this data over to another location. What good does that do me? Well, now I have an offsite copy of my data. So if I had a site disaster or something like that, my backup is replicated offsite, right? That could be cloud if we wanted it to be, right? Very straightforward. Then we're performing that virtual standby task. So I'm taking my backup and I'm converting that backup into a virtual machine in my virtual environment. So it's, in this case, it's where I've replicated it over to. It could be either location as far as that goes. And I've provided my virtual environment, which is Hyper-V, and if I went into the virtual machine, the amount of memory I wanted to give it and those kind of things is all there as well as the monitoring kind of side. If we jump to the advanced tab, we're also monitoring that, right? So virtual standby is not only taking a look at that, but it's also monitoring it. And then we go into...
Let me jump in quickly. On standby, we had a question I've been holding on to for a few minutes. He's talking about our VM standby and similar solutions. Are they open to real-time ransomware encryption processes, or are they offline as far as access by the malware is concerned?
Well, the instant virtual machine is not turned on, right? So the instant virtual machine is in a data store in an off state, so it isn't directly, open to it that it can be infected in that method, right? So, ultimately it would depend on, who gets infected, what their rights are, those kind of things, but it couldn't normally just spread to that instant virtual machine in that case. Right, so you definitely would want to make sure that the users that can create virtual machines, offline machines, things like that, that they're secure, right? That's usually your administrator account as far as that goes.
Very good.
Right now, the assured recovery test, which is making sure that not only is my, it's kind of that second kind of look. It's going to take and it's going to leverage our capability to do an instant VM, right? Which is, mounting a backup as a virtual machine. So what this does is it automates that process as a test. So we'll know as is my backup a valid backup, right? So we're going to go in and we've chose here to check our latest backups, right? Our latest recovery points. Our test settings, we're leveraging VMware for this particular test, and specifying, again, the resources to give that machine. We're just mounting this backup. We're not actually doing that. If I was backing up, let's say, a share or just a drive, not an entire machine, I could do this as an instant virtual disk test where I mount the disk and I run check disk and those kind of things against it. Doesn't help me so much with ransomware in that case, but it could definitely tell me that the backup itself is good, right? So I know that the backup is good, which is always key. I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I've had, customers with all kinds of different, challenges where they thought they were doing good backups, and it was in their mind that they were. And one of the stories I always tell is, customer that was doing a tape backup, and he had it set to overwrite and eject on completion. So every night he would run his backup, he'd go home, next day he would put the tape back in and he would run the backup again. And the challenge was he never changed tapes. So when he went finally to do a restore, he only had last night's backup, right? So there's all different reasons and why things happen. Well, yes, we're talking about ransomware in this case, but if he was trying to recover from ransomware and he's like, well, I have 3 days worth of backups or a week or whatever. Well, unfortunately, in this case, he wouldn't have, right? So definitely having some type of testing in place, always helps with that as well. If we can automate that, all the better. Right, and that's really what this is doing, is we're taking in and we're putting in a schedule, which by default is going to be as soon as the backup completes, but in this case, we can put in a schedule. Maybe I want this to run every Saturday or something like that. And although my source was my latest, I could have said, go from, look at my daily backups or something like that as well. So I can choose to do something besides just my daily backups. And we can also put in scripts to run against there too. right? So assured recovery, a very important test. It leverages the instant VM capability within UDP to automate testing and be able to do that. And when it's done with the test, it it dismounts that backup, and you don't have any hit or anything from a storage perspective as far as that goes. Okay, I just wanted to pop over to my VMware environment there real quick, but if we go back up here to my all nodes section, and I'm just going to pick on a machine here and be able to restore that. You see we have quite a bit going on here. I'll just pick one of these machines and we can go in and we can take a look at, if I needed to do a restore. Number one, this is that machine where we had a virtual standby and everything else going on. So right from here I could turn on that machine if I wanted to stand it up. I could also go into VMware or Hyper-V and do it from there as well. If I wanted to perform instant VM, I can just choose the option create instant VM and then go through the process of 4 steps booting up that machine. So maybe my virtual standby was infected, right? Unfortunately for some reason, right? I could go back to previous backups within the last month, right? Longer than that if I needed to do that, right? Older than 30 days, and just choose which one do I want to restore from and go ahead and select that. So in 4 steps, we're going to go through, we're going to specify my hypervisor I want to spin that up on, and this should take, it takes longer for me to kind of demo it than it ever usually does to actually do it in most cases. So we're going to go through and choose my host. We're then going to go through and choose the server that we want to perform the recovery. A lot of times that's going to be the backup server, but it could be an alternate server. Maybe you're doing hourly backups or 3-hour backups or something like that. Or you just don't have a lot of available resources on that machine. You want a different machine to do it. So you can definitely specify that. So it has to have the agent, UDP agent on there. It's got to see the data. It's got to see the host. And if you will, just think of it kind of as a proxy at that point. I don't mean the official term of proxy. I mean, just generic. It's the middleman there as far as that goes. We're going to give it a prefix, right? In our case, for vCenter, we're going to give it a description in our console to be able to see that as well. We're going to then be able to go through and on that recovery server point to a folder, and this is where we would mount that backup, right? Capture any changes, all those kind of things. What kind of resources do I want to give that machine? How much memory? How many processors? Do I want to change the adapter settings? Do I want to connect an adapter to it? All of that would be different steps. We could even change the host name, which is down here, right? So we could do that as well if I needed to bring that up different. And we go through the process of then booting that machine. So we go ahead and boot now. And if I go over to my vCenter, right, we'll see that machine get created, and in a few minutes that machine would be accessible. I've never booted up this particular one, but I would say well under 10 minutes we'd have this machine up and running. It probably would be around 5 minutes. This one had a little bit more resources tied to it, but it just kind of depends. I don't have a lot of resources in my demo environment. I've been on customer sites where this process is super fast, but it really just depends on the resources you have behind it too. So that's instant VM, right? I'm not going to make you guys look at a blank screen until that comes up. But if you watch down here, you definitely see that it's it's creating that machine. It's doing everything that down here. Maybe we make this a little larger. Right, so we're seeing all these different, connecting, that data store, that temporary data store, and all that as well to that, and it'll eventually start this up, right? If I click on the right one, right? So we may come back to it, but just right now it's going to be blank as it goes through and creates that. So that's the instant VM process. We don't think it should be difficult. It should be those 4 steps, which, like I said, it took me much longer to talk about it than you would typically see with, actually if you went through it and just manually did it. You're going to go through those steps relatively quickly. So we talked a little about virtual standby, what that looks like, instant VM. We talked about the assured recovery. We talked about the SLA reports I wanted to show you. Keep in mind that these are processes that can be performed in the cloud as well. So for instance, if you're replicating your data up to the Arcserve cloud, there's methods to do DR and bring that data up there if you needed to do that. If you're going to Amazon, AWS, right? You can do that too, right? So we have capabilities to take and be able to do, perform virtual standby up in Amazon. So you really have to take a look at your data, look at the threat that's behind it, value your data, how frequently can you do your backups, leverage the reporting that's within the tool, your RPO, your RTO kind of thing, to kind of build out that better overview of what you're going to do, and then put that policy in place and then use the tools that are there to kind of help you with that. So virtual standby, instant virtual machine, those kind of things. In the case of that medical company, they were able to do file level restores and restore, just individual files. Not always will that be the case. Sometimes you need to restore an entire machine. It may be simpler to say, you know what, let's blow away the entire machine and just restore it from a backup, right, and get back up and running. Do something like a virtual machine level restore as well, or virtual standby and worry about the mess afterwards and those kind of things. So definitely all the different capabilities there in the tools in order to kind of help you out as far as that goes.
Stacy, we've got two instant recovery capability, instant VM and virtual standby. How do you compare the two with regard to ransomware?
Well, virtual standby is going to give you the best performance. Okay, virtual standby is going to give you, there's already a VM created, right? So from a ransomware standpoint, it's going to be the time it takes to spin up that machine. It has automated testing, things like that. So if that machine were to go completely offline, you could have it, the virtual standby come back on. If there's any shortcomings to virtual standby, it would be that there is a storage hit to it because you actually are creating a virtual machine, and it is that it's typically going to be your latest backup. So if the infection occurred after, or before your backup, all right, then that's kind of one of your risks there as far as that goes. Where instant VM comes into play, right? And I tell people all the time, if you can run virtual standby, absolutely I would do it. Doesn't mean that you're never going to leverage instant VM, because instant VM, you saw I was able to go to the past 30 days or even older, pick a backup and come back from it, right? So it gave me more flexibility on when I'm coming from. But that machine's not actually created. So if I wanted then to create a machine from it, right, I could use tools like vMotion Live Migration to make it a permanent machine, or I could, do backups and restores of that while it's up and running. But it is, it's not going to give you the same performance as virtual standby.
I know what you're saying. It sounds like the virtual standby is operating more with newer backups.
It is,
absolutely. VM, you can pick any one you want. You can pick a 30-day-old one.
All right, you're also going to get better performance as well from virtual standby, though. So that kind of is going to play a key role in there as well.
Very good.
And you see that machine did come up, so that wasn't too bad. I think that was only about 3 minutes. I might have my timing wrong there, but definitely kind of depends on resources, those kind of things. So, but quickly I could log into this machine and we could start accessing it and using this machine as well. If this was an assured recovery test, run whatever scripts as part of that test, and then it would take it offline, delete that temporary data store, and you'd be good. I mean, it's mounted, so it's dismounting it, not deleting it. But as far as that goes. Now, I did leave about 10 minutes for questions, which is what we usually try to do here. So if you have any questions, I mean, I think that as far as we still have some more slides here. So which I should know, and I do apologize. But we'll kind of wrap up with, with the recommendations from Arcserve, and then, if there's still any questions, again, we got about 10 minutes, so please throw your questions at us as far as that goes.
Casey, while we wait for questions, I've got a couple. Now, we've kind of touched on tape. How have you seen, with working with customers, the usage of tape? People talking about it more, and how does it fit nicely into our backup plans?
So good question and before I've heard 10 years now that tape is dead. Okay, and really there's two instances really where I see that not to be the case. The first is industry specific, right? If you need to retain your data for 7 years or something like that, or long term. I've talked to hospitals that their processes, they don't ever delete data. Right? They put it on tape, they put it on a shelf. If they ever need it, it's there. All right, as far as that goes. Or they ship it off somewhere, whatever their policy may be. Or maybe it's federal and they can't use public cloud for some reason, right? I've ran into that as well. So those are going to be one use cases. The other use case for it that I see a strong use case is ransomware, right? If something is offline, it can't get infected. Right, that's just the bottom line of it, and so once that tape is done, so disk, yes, disk gives you faster restores, gives you faster backups, gives you a faster approach, from that. It gives you a lot of different options for disaster recovery, everything like that. So I don't advocate not going to disk. I think that it adds a ton to your options. Going disk to tape is never bad. I mean, I get it. Some people don't want to deal with tape. They want to go to cloud or something like that as an option. It's always there as well. But tape to me still has a very important place, in securing your data, backing up your data. The way that we leverage it is in the disk to tape. We have Arcserve Backup, which is direct to tape, but within UDP, it would be a copy to tape where we would copy your backups over to tape. And it'd be right within that console. Right, we've been in that industry for 27 years, I think it is now. So I mean, we know tape very, very well. And we have a big install base when it comes to tape too. So we're not going to walk away from it anytime soon. We have gone to more of a disk first kind of approach though.
Excellent. I know you want to get into these top 5 recommendations, and you told me before the talk these are all #1 things to do in your mind, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to set a list, right? So, having a comprehensive backup solution, right? It's important. It is very, very important, right? Because when you go to recovery, it's probably the most important thing on the list. Once you've already been infected, right? Is the recovery. So it's all your point of view, right? Before you've ever been infected, what's the top thing you could do is educate people, right? And educate your end users, right? But at the end of the day, they're only people, right? They're gonna click on that funny picture or something like that. I can't say that I've never done it. I'd like to say I've never done it, but sometimes I don't do the smartest things myself, even though I know better. All right. And users are like that, right? And my wife, who works for a hospital, right? She takes in a USB drive. She doesn't do it now. She does her phone, but she used to take in this USB drive. Now, folks, if you could imagine a USB stick without any casing on it, so you actually see the board, right? And she had tape wrapped around it and would plug it into her laptop and listen to music off of it because it was her favorite USB stick or whatever. And I could have got her like so many different drives, but no, that she wanted to keep this one. But at the end of the day, she was plugging an unsecured device into the network, right? So from a security standpoint, very, very scary there, right? So as far as that goes, so education, top of the list. Practice the principle of least privilege. I mean, this is very, very important. Secure who has access to what data, right? Make sure that people are logging in with the proper accounts, right? Make sure people aren't sharing, accounts. I've worked at companies before where, there's like one user that has different levels of access, on like a sales floor or something like that, and can override or things like that. But it's such a pain, to call that person over. Hey, what's your username and password, right? Yeah, no, never do that, right? And have those security SOPs in place, right, and internal policies. Make sure you have good antivirus, anti-malware, and all this stuff in place. Make sure it's multi-layered, right? So make sure you have that in place. And then, manage systems with proactive patch management. Make sure that you're updating and doing those kind of things. Again, this is where backup comes into play important there as well. And this is where I take it, honestly, in my list, I put that at number 6, backup. But when you restore, now that list kind of flips, doesn't it? And from recovering, the backup becomes the most important piece at that point, right? So, it's all on perspective, right? I'm not saying that backup's not important. I work for a backup company, and I believe it's extremely important. But we have to also realize that the other things on this list are important as well, right? If you're always recovering, from sorry, Mary, but Mary keeps clicking on a file. And infecting the network. At some point, we need to look at the education for Mary, and kind of just make sure that puppies and kitties, don't trust them. All right.
Hey, that brings up a good question, though, Stacy, because I think a lot of the vulnerability is at the endpoints. How does the common attacks through endpoints, email, the web browsers? How does that relate to protecting our SQL servers and our production servers?
Well, I mean, one point is going to back to that principle of least, that least privilege, right? Make sure who has access to it as well. Lock down shares. Make sure that there aren't a lot of shares. If you can, the least amount of shares, the better, right? As far as that goes. And then ultimately, like I said, you are going to get infected. I picked on Mary there, but I said, myself, I've done things that, I know better than to do, and I've just done them because I wanted to at the time. I have no excuse for it, right? But being able to recover.
To get it. So to be real clear, it could be one of your IT staff sitting there in his office, web browsing. But because of his access, boom, we've got now a tunnel over to our production servers.
Sure, and depending on who he's logged in as, okay, let's say he's browsing and he's logged in as administrator, which he shouldn't really be, but he's done it, right? He's browsing as that administrative account, okay, which we don't have locked down and can't hit the internet or something like that. So at that point, now if we have an offline copy of our data, because we've backed up not only to disk but to tape, we're covered. We don't have to worry about that as well, right? So there are ways that can mitigate your loss, even if it is the top level that gets infected.
Well, here's a quick question. I know we're looking at the clock, but we got time. David here says, you mentioned least privilege. Does removing local admin access on workstations help thwart ransomware?
I mean, it definitely can, right? I mean, it really. I mean, you always want to limit that, anyways. To be honest with you, it's although you have a local admin kind of account there, I don't think that you share that with people, right? So you keep that kind of in your back pocket. But absolutely, because especially if it's the same local kind of admin kind of rule that goes across or whatever. So. Maybe it limits the infection to that machine, but if that machine has a share, then it gets out, and somebody else has that share, now it starts spreading or something like that. So absolutely, David, you should do that.
All right. Stacy, this has been fantastic. Thank you very much. I know, Mary, you want to have some final words?
Sure. Thank you so much to Bob and Stacy for this great presentation. I certainly learned a lot. I hope the audience did as well. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be sending out a recording of this presentation later, so keep an eye out for that. If you have any additional questions, please do reach out to us at www.arcserve.com. On the site, you can download a trial, you can call us directly, you can chat online with one of our specialists. We'll be happy to help you no matter what it is that you need. So with all of that taken care of, thanks again for attending today and have a great rest of your day.